has reached a low enough level that it's not burning us up. Now, if you went to Mercury, where you're much closer to the sun, the energy density, the amount of energy per unit area is much, much higher, and it's burning Mercury up.
Right. So you're saying, you're invoking the inverse square law, and you're saying that
Exactly.
dissipation is because of the dilution, right? As the sun's particular rays that are aimed or leave from the sun pointed towards Earth, by the time they reach Earth, they're so dissipated that they're down to much more manageable temperatures. Although you still tell me
well,
that
it's not really dissipation.
Levels,
Dissipation implies attenuation and absorption. It's dispersion. It's just being dispersed.
Yeah.
No, dispersion and dissipation are no, they are not the same. Dissipation implies a absorption and an attenuation.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, George. It implies scattering.
Believe what you want.
Well, it does. The dissipation implies a scattering, and that's exactly what you say. The intensity weakens with the increased distance. Now, if we think in real terms, there's nothing between, well, in real terms, there's nothing between the sun and the Earth except empty space, and the sun is also almost 1 million miles across, whereas the Earth has a diameter of, 7,000 miles. We should be burned to shit, man. Your explanation is absolutely unsatisfactory.
No, it's not unsatisfactory.
Of course it is in every way, but I mean, do you think a child will believe you?
All you have to do, okay, look, you take the total wattage output of the sun at the surface of the sun, that same total power output is distributed over a much larger area as you move away from the sun. Yeah. By the time you get to the Earth at 1 astronomical unit, which is 150 million kilometers, that surface area, the surface area is pi r squared. That's a huge surface area over which that same amount of total energy output from the sun is distributed. And that turns out to be at the edge of the atmosphere, at where the Earth is in orbit about the sun. That's 1,300 watts per square meter. And you lose about 30% of that coming through the atmosphere, and the amount of sun energy hitting the surface of the Earth is right on the real close to a kilowatt per square meter, or 1,000 watts per square meter, and that's what our solar panels absorb and convert into energy at about a 17% efficiency ratio.
Well, God forbid you're wrong about that, George. And of course, in a flat Earth way of thinking, I remember I asked you, or asked Ranty to ask you, why can't the Earth be flat? And you went into the evolution of the Earth from a dying star and how the universe began in the first place to say that that was the main reason. But God forbid.
No, I've never discussed the birth of the Earth.
Well, if you remember last time, Ranty, I got you to ask that question to George, but you discussed, you said it's a difficult question, but I would say that you reverted back to the formation of, let's say, the galaxy or the sun, the heliocentric system itself. That's what you reverted back to. And what I got from that was you'd have to dismiss everything you've been told or everything you held to be true in order to consider flat Earth a reality. You didn't come out with any experiences you had yourself. That's what I remember the question. But let me just say, with the sun is right there. The sun is a reflection of something, right? We have a watery barrier, and its intensity does vary with distance, but not in the way that George is presenting here.
Well, you have this claim, but I doubt that you have any solid physics or evidence behind that. We've
seen where all the solid physics and science,
the standard model of stars are just nuclear furnaces. It's transmutation of elements. That hydrogen is converted to helium, and in the process, tremendous amounts of energy are radiated in that transformation process as you transmutate two hydrogen atoms into a helium atom.
And two hydrogen and oxygen give us what, George?
Well, that's water, but there is no oxygen. It's not.
Is there
water.
Not oxygen? Now, is there not oxygen within the water?
There is within the water, but they're not at the sun.
Well, I mean, it depends on what the sun actually is.
We can actually see that. It's called spectroscopy. You can look at the absorption and radiation spectra of the sun, you can see there's every element has a very specific signature associated
sodium.
with it.
Doesn't sodium play a massive role, George?
Not in the sun, no.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, and I might be thinking of something else.
Heavier elements usually arise from nova explosions. The sun does produce some heavier elements besides helium. You can get into lithium, but you're certainly not producing things on the order of elements heavier than iron in the sun presently. But when it starts collapsing near its death, then you get the heavier elements produced. And then when a star novas or supernovas, that's when it spews forth all the heavier elements.
Yeah, okay, well, I might be pretty sure I'm not, but I'm sure sodium shows a significant spike when under analysis, spectral analysis. Anyway, that's not the point. But for me, it's water down, or just why we have astronauts. All clues for astro is star, nautical water, star and water. So we have a reflection source, a singular source. Everything travels in unison on a nightly, daily basis. The variations has got to do with, as far as I'm concerned, the particular movements of the source at the center, which is identified as Aristarchus. So in terms of what you say as to the nature of stars and planets, etc., for me, and I'm sure many others, these are all lights in the sky. They are reflections. And once we understand...
I understand that. I've heard that. But
yeah, so once we understand that there is a watery backdrop, George, this can help us then, right?
Solar scientists have determined, they know the nuclear reactions that take place in a star like the sun. It's very predictable from quantum mechanics and the fusion reactions that occur in a star and the transmutation of elements. There's a sequence that the reaction process goes through. And in the process of doing that, tremendous amounts of energy are released.
So I don't think anyone believes you here, George. What we're trying to get at is, well, what actually is, I just picture in my own brain, an intense laser, right? And shining it down in a bucket of water. Obviously, the more powerful the laser, the more impact it's going to have within the water itself. Once we come to flat Earth thinking, and we've done away with the vacuum of space, what's the opposite of empty space? Well, heavy waters. Where can we find evidence of waters on Earth? Well, the oceans, right? The oceans. Now, the Earth is in a divided state. When it comes back to, you were talking about quantum erasure, he talks about the natural physical laws, right? We have to define terms here. What we mean by natural. Now, what you're going to say natural means is definitely going to vary from what I would say natural means, and indeed quantum erasure, because he holds to, a religious sort of aspect, a religious take on everything. So, yeah, when we talk about natural, we have to absolutely define terms. And I hold that nothing is natural. The Earth itself is in an unnatural state.
Okay. I get your point, Pete. All right, fine.
Yeah. Okay. Chirag is here, so I'll let someone else talk. How are you doing, man?
I mean, these reactions can be created in the lab. So these fusion reactions can be created in the lab to reproduce what's happening on the sun. It's just that we haven't been successful to have sustained fusion reactions yet that go beyond tens of milliseconds. But once we figure out that process, then we'll have a game-changing source of energy here on Earth. Yeah,
we've been waiting for that, not for too long, right, George? Remember Tomorrow's World back in the 80s?
Yeah, the Princeton, late 70s, early 80s. They've been working on the Tomahawk reactor for well over 30 years.
George, how sure are you it's a ball?
How sure?
Yeah,
100%.
I know you said earlier you were interested in this for first principles and stuff like that. Are you here because are some of these ideas compelling on the flat Earth? Even one.
What? A flat Earth idea compelling?
Yeah. Are there any arguments that are put forth with flat Earth that are compelling to you? Is that why you're here? Or is it purely what you said earlier about whatever? learning how to
No,
explain things from
no,
first principles?
no. I can't say that there's anything compelling.
Not one thing.
Not that I can think of offhand. No.
But I guess here's the point where it's just so you're aware, at least what we view these kind of dialogues is you have to understand if it's a ball, and let's say a majority of the world believe that a ball, which is the way it is right now, and then there was long-standing science, backing that up, and then technology is improving, we would not expect a group at all to be worried or care that a flat Earth community exists.
Oh no,
So
I don't. No, I don't think you can make that stretch. I don't think
I'm saying
you can do that.
I'm
in any sort of disciplines, there's always naysayers.
No, all I'm saying is I'm giving you our vantage point for why would there be a large group of body who is apparently standing on, this body of science, and then, like I said, it's only improving, that would even need to address a flat Earth community.
I think you're overestimating the size of the group that is not agreeing with the standard model.
Yeah, there's a lot of us.
No, there aren't. There aren't.
Yeah,
there's close to 9 billion people on the face of the earth.
No, true. A lot is definitely relative, but there's clearly enough for you guys to take time out of your day to come debate us, so that.
No, not really. I don't do that much debating. A lot of the other guys do. I'll admit there's people that regularly show up on Jose's show, Nathan's show, Ranty's show, and that
right.
They do these debates. But it's not a large group of people. It's the same people day in and day out, week after week. I would say on the globe side and the flat Earth side, the people that you find in active discussion and or debate is probably less than 30 people.
No. I'm just. I'm not. It's not even a shot to you, but do you understand our vantage point? Why would you guys care? Like it will get figured out. Let's say we ignore all the images and all these things. Do you honestly think? And I'm talking even the next year or two or three.
See, you're overstating the case. I really don't care. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care about the shape of the Earth. Other people do. I'm not as invested in this as you'll find other globers. I'm in for the challenge to try to figure out where you've gone wrong in your thinking and your logic. That's where
bullshit, George. Bullshit. Sure. You can't even admit that there's one reasonable argument that the flat earthers have to bring to the table. Do you not admit that we never experience motion? That alone is an argument itself.
Yes, we do experience motion.
When have you experienced motion?
You can demonstrate it. Take the Evotos effect. Take a scale.
No. I'm talking about your own personal experience. Chirac asked you a person.
Well, you can't because the accelerations are so minute.
It doesn't matter.
Correct.
This is the reason in itself. Hang on. This is the reason in itself, George.
If your body is not sensitive enough to discern the difference between 9.80655 meters per second squared and 9.8
we get it. The math says yes.
You can't do that. You're
right, George.
You're going to conclude that it's motionless.
Right. Hang on, George. So Chirag asked you a very specific question. Is there any good points the flat earthers bring to the table? You said none. Right. Now, as an individual, hang on, George. You talked about 9 billion. That suddenly went. Hang on, George. Learn to stop talking a second. You suddenly talk about 9 billion people. That went up from 7 billion, which is nowhere near the Earth's population. But anyway, none of these people would have heard about the Ethos effect or wouldn't be bothered about going to these extremes to try and prove emotion, right, that they've never experienced. So on that grounds alone, that's a good reason to take flat Earth seriously, not to mind the lack of curvature and so many other aspects that are problematic.
There's no lack of curvature. I did an experiment 2 years ago on Frozen Lake over 6 miles, and I detected the 8 inches per mile squared, and it's well documented. Walter Bislin's documented all my work in a very fine piece of work on his channel. Go and watch it.
So no one believes you, though, George, and you say you don't care about flat Earth, but yet you've spent thousands of hours. Now, you are a successful businessman, are you not? You worked for government contracts. You worked for multinational agencies. You said that yourself. Did you not work for these companies? Well,
I sometimes do contract work.
Right. So you spent thousands of hours doing this, trying to convince people like me and just the next guy who's waiting in line.
I'm not trying to convince you. You can take it at
I take it you're an actor, operative
I
agent,
did the
George.
work. I made the measurements. I did the work. It's well documented. You can go and read it and decide for yourself.
George, I take it you're an actor, agent, operative, whatever you are.
Just don't mention George. Just speak all ball earthers, because he's going to get offended and just keep saying it's not me.
So no, I'm not offended
all
at
ball
all.
earthers.
None of this offends me.
George, on probabilities alone, you like maths. On probabilities alone, the spinning ball earth is impossible because every single aspect of the theorizing is problematic. This, in culmination, George, makes it impossible.
But give me one of the problems that you're concerned.
No motion has ever been detected.
Correct.
No curvature has ever been
observed. They have been
observed.
detected. You can detect it. Take a very sensitive gram weighing scale and take yourself, say, a half a kilogram weight on one of these scales that can resolve 1/100th of a gram. Take it to the equator, weigh it, then take it to at one of the northern or southern latitudes. Go up to Norway and weigh it again. You'll find that it's different.
You'll find a distinction. And so what's the cause of that distinction, George?
The centrifugal force that acts opposite to the gravitational force due to the rotation.
But how do you decide that? You have to go through a different process then to decide that that's the actual cause, whereas I'll tell you what's causing it. It's the proximity to the barrier above. Ranty, I mentioned the barrier and the broken system we're in. We live in a bi-barrier. The north center, right, is an isolated barrier from the one we're under. The barrier we're under begins low at the north. This is the Aurora Borealis, right, highest at the equatorial areas and then low again at the southern peripherals. At its highest point, just to give you an idea of the dimensions I'm thinking in, this is what we're told by science, the Kármán line, 60 miles up. It seems crazy, but this is the sort of picture I painted for myself. But George, you're
saying this barrier is out at the Kármán line?
No, I'm saying that's the highest point. So in one sense, if you go from the equator up to Norway, you are decreasing the vertical distance between you and this energized barrier. This is why we have a zero pressure zone above. Remember Nathan said it was impossible to have a zero pressure zone? Why? Not impossible. If there's a pushing force from above.
Why does the distance decrease as you go from the equator to the North Pole? Why does that distance to the barrier decrease? What is the nature of this or the shape of the barrier that causes this?
Right. Well, this is where all the clues. See, everything presented.
No.
Hang on, George. You asked me a question.
Tell me the
this is where the latitude. I'm answering it. This is where the spinning ball comes into it for its clues, right? So on a flat and stationary plane, the only coordinate system is the grid-like, or the most appropriate one is a grid-like or Cartesian coordinate system. The spherical coordinate system applies to the contour of the barrier. So once we have the highest point, then given the 69 per degree, we can work out then the contour to the ground. That's how I think it actually works. Everything is inverted. It's a great game of clues, and I think you know more than what you let on, George.
So out at the North Pole, out at the North Pole, then how far away would your estimate be that you're from this barrier?
Listen, there's documentation. As you go north, first of all, the North Pole is a no-fly zone, but as you go north, you have to keep descending. So there's, if you go on YouTube and type a German expedition or tourist expedition to the North Pole, you'll be able to see this. So the indications. Hang on, George. You
have an idea. That's all I'm asking. Very simple question. How far up off the surface of the Earth is this barrier at the North Pole? I mean, you must have some understanding.
I do. You can't get to the North Pole, right? You can't get to the North Center. So there's no-go areas.
Sure you can.
Where you can go.
I have a neighbor that has a flying service on the Brook Range on the north coast of Alaska. He flies up there every summer.
No, dude, you can't use the flying argument because I have a pilot who talks about.
No, there's a no-go area. You can't get beyond a certain point.
Yeah, you can't. To be fair,
that's true. And Chirag, that's because there's a barrier there, and this is what
there is no barrier there. The Russians go there. The U.S. Navy goes there under the ice.
Wait,
they also went to the moon.
Let me ask George a question. George, you worked at freaking Hewlett Packard, member of technical staff R&D for 7 years. Dude, you know what a unique solution is in mathematics, a rigorous solution. So
do I what? Did I what?
You understand what a unique solution is in mathematics, correct? In linear algebra?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you admit, and let's test your honesty, that a unique solution has not been presented on either side up to this point?
Unique solution to what?
To the geometry of the Earth. That's why we're here, man.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sure it has. Right? So geodetic surveyors have measured the surface of the Earth. They know it to a high degree of precision.
No. I'm talking about a unique solution mathematically where this is done. It's been made public. It's maybe documented in a paper. All the
I'm
variables
not
have
sure
been eliminated.
what do you mean by unique solution?
That it cannot be confused with any other geometry.
Yes.
You
the
know what?
geodetic surveyors have measured it.
No, I think that's the part where if you guys brought out what you guys have done, we would be able to find flaws in it immediately, dude. We know that you're hiding.
Jesse Kloslowski has all this stuff posted on his channel. Volumes and volumes of information that he and other geodetic surveyors have.
Correct. They all assume that it's flat. But I would never expect them to bring something out that would be clear, concise, a unique solution, right? That we know that that's not out there, or else it would have been. There's only
one shape that fits the data, and that happens to be a sphere.
No, that's the thing. No one has brought that out and shown that.
Yes, they have. Go and talk to Jesse Kloslowski and ask him to give you all the data on his channel. I mean, I could go to his channel and find it for you, but you could do it yourself.
We've tried to talk to Jesse Kloslowski, and he got all emotional.
No, I don't think you have. I remember your conversations with Jesse and I in the past, and you had us do all this work for you. We were going to do an experiment together, a test together, and then you got very nasty. You told us to go to hell. Started calling us agents of the devil, that we are Satanists. What's wrong with you?
No, that's what it is. If you guys are hiding the curve with optics, that's what you guys are fundamentally. So what's wrong with that? If we're wrong, then we could be agents and Satanists. You can call us that. I have no issues with that.
That's your opinion. You don't know that I'm wrong for sure.
But
that's just your opinion.
All I'm saying is you have to know at this point that we know that you're hiding the curve in optics. That's been made very, very
well. That's your opinion. Nobody's hiding the curve. I went out and measured it. Listen. Winter is coming. In 3 months, our lake is going to be frozen here. I'm more than willing to set up my test range again with you or any group of.
But we have to come up with a test together.
Yes, we can do the test together. We'll set it all up together. All you have to do is come to International Falls. I have places that can accommodate probably 4 or 5 people. Other than that, you'll have to find your own accommodations. If you have more people,
don't worry about that stuff. All I'm saying is, though, and that's good that you're open, because you're one of the few I would say that is actually open to something technical. But do you at least, before we even ever go down this road ever again, which I have a feeling will not even happen, but we have to do it in a way that is, I'm looking at your background. You claim to be a math guy, so I want to confirm that you know what a unique solution is. We're not going to create a test that will lead to an ambiguous.
Well, in your opinion, yes, I am a math guy. I have a master's degree in mathematics, along with a master's in engineering and PhD in electrical engineering.
All but dissertation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm looking at your profile now. I trust that you're capable of architecting a test. People like Pete, myself, engineers. We are looking for a unique solution. And you guys are claiming to be math people, but we're finding out that you're not. You know, that's.
Yeah. I am a math person.
No, I'm sorry. That's not. Sorry, George. That was not a shot to you. Sorry.
I have a master's degree in mathematics.
Yeah, I see that. You focus on feedback control
from Michigan Tech.
Yeah, you're always perfect for the role you play, George, or not play, as the case may be.
Yeah. So George, people like Pete and I, we know what's going on. We're seeing past this, so we're going to kind of double down. We want to come up with a unique solution mathematically. We're not going to get optics. We're not going to make it flat earth biased or ball earth biased. Are you open to something like that? We haven't got that vibe. I would actually say you've been more inclined to that than anybody else. Rumpus is a clown. He just sits there and pulls up the PDF and talks about all these rays looming and stuff. We're past that. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of us are well past that.
CP, I have made this offer for 2 years, and I still keep this offer open. I have precision surveying equipment. I have a very capable electronics lab here. I have plenty of fabrication equipment like arc welders, oxyacetylene welders, hacksaws.
I want to use
all this stuff. We can fabricate our own thing. You come up with an experiment. You design an experiment and the equipment that you want, and I will make sure that it will be at your disposal when you arrive here to set up your test.
But what Pete and I are getting at is we just want to make sure you're honest. If the results are what they are and we document it, you're not going to go and wine if it's a flat Earth? That's our.
No.
That's our
Why
worry.
would I? Why
I'm
would
just
I?
asking. Well, we don't know why you're here. That's what we're trying to get at. Why do you come on?
Well,
Even care?
Chirag, let me just remind George.
To me, in making the measurements, see, my whole career has been, when it started at Hewlett Packard, I was involved in designing precision laboratory grade test equipment, particularly digital multimeters. I did the analog design for the front ends of these multimeters and data acquisition systems. And I worked in standards labs at time while we were developing these instruments to be able to make the measurements to determine the linearity and the accuracy of these instruments. This has been my love, measurements and understanding the error levels in making measurements and how to reduce error levels in measurements has been my whole career. This is what I'm involved with. This is what people pay me to do for them.
Good. Great.
Well, George, since it's so important to you, measurements and all that, I was going to ask you two questions, but the first one I will do for now. Who was the first to measure the movement of the Earth? Because you'll agree that if there's not a strong foundation for something, and that goes on to my second question, but do you recall who was the first to actually measure and document and prove the motion of the Earth? Because let me just say my second part, because would you agree with what I said earlier on? If the Earth could be shown to not move, and we were trying to determine the nature of the Earth, the ball would not enter our reckoning based on our universal experience of water at similar temperatures and pressures, i.e. always flat when still. So did you get the bones of both of those questions? Who was the first to measure movement of the Earth? And if the Earth was shown not to move, would you agree with my conclusion that the ball doesn't enter the equation?
I can't give you the name offhand. I wouldn't say that it was any one individual that had an aha moment that made this measurement. These sorts of things were an evolution of many people. Back in ancient times, even then they were wondering about, laying on the ground at nighttime, goat and sheep herders, they were the first astronomers. They laid on their backs, tending to their flocks, looking at the stars.
So you read, George, you don't know anything about ancient times.
They noticed these patterns, and over
built the underwater
centuries,
cities, George.
No, wait, Pete. Let me reword that just a more gentle way. Do you know if the curve or the spin came first in science, in the body of science history? Do you know which did? Because I think maybe, I'm not sure if Pete's getting at this. We're a little concerned that the spin is sort of made up kind of thing after a curve was thought of. So do you know about that?
I reverse it. I say that the curve is based on the assumption that the Earth moves.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Yep. But I don't know if, George, that this is the thing that we're a lot of us know this, dude, and it's a lot of us have religious things tied to this. So we know that we're not spinning. So it would take something extremely compelling to then get us not only over that hurdle, but then talk about a curvature, which to me also, again, is preposterous in lieu of all the different tests that people like Ranty and others have done.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, that's something you're going to have to.
Well, George, and we're going to need more
than. It's not my mission. It's not my mission in life to try to convince you.
Yeah, but hang on, George. We're going to need a little bit more. If we're to trust science and the history of science, we're going to need a little bit more than in ancient times. A few shepherds lay down and they were the first astronomers.
George, we give you more credit, by the way, than Rumpus. I don't like that you don't call people's licensing things, but you're more slightly inclined to test. Rumpus is just a straight demon. I don't even know how to say that.
Well, this isn't about Rumpus. Please don't.
Fair enough.
Rumpus is a good friend of mine. I don't like you dissing him that way.
Have you seen his face, George? Have you seen Rumpus's face? Seriously, you said he's a good friend of yours.
Let's not go down this road.
No, that's
a simple question. Have you seen his face? Yes or no?
That's fine.
You have some questions, fine.
All right, so George, I had a buddy at Amazon. I have a friend at Amazon who started a drone company, and he finally reached out back to me recently, and so he made a recommendation for a drone. So I agree the burden is on us if we want to do this, but I will think of something and then run it past you somehow. But I think you know this, but all the optics and stuff, at best, it's a draw. At best, like there's enough stuff there that with Pete, Chris, and Red Pill and all those people, like there's enough images out there that one could be persuaded to believe in either.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I don't get involved with these images because, to me, they're all suspect from both sides.
Correct.
Because no one accurately records the temperature in the optical corridor, so one can assess what kind of refraction is going on. A lot of times they don't even disclose the GPS coordinates, the location of where they're at, time of day, or make any of these temperature and barometric pressure readings. They don't even tell you the distances. They don't even know the distances to the objects that they're looking at. So to me, it's just all a bunch of fluff and nonsense and just something to argue over. And I just don't get involved with photographs because, like I say, no one from what I have seen has accurately recorded sufficient amounts of data so that.
Well, hang on, George. So have you seen photographs where you've said to yourself, even though I don't trust them, we shouldn't be able to see that? Have you said that to yourself?
Man. He has, man, for sure, dude. He's not going to say it, but I'm sure he has.
No. I look at things, and if, like I said, I don't really look at a lot of these photographs until someone points out something to me. I just haven't been interested in that because, like I say, is a lot of times what I see. Here's the main problem that I see with still photographs. And I've noticed this in my own taking photography of my targets out at a distance over the ice under different atmospheric conditions. When you take a still photograph, it hides the amount of refraction and shimmer that might be going on. Now, if you can give me, let's say, 4 or 5 seconds of live video from which that photograph is derived, then I can start making an assessment. I can look at the live video.
There's none of those around, right?
Make an assessment as to how much shimmering there might be going on in the background and what kind of refraction conditions are occurring.
Yeah, and I like that because that's now you're sounding more human because Rump is putting those freaking windmills up there and like giving us static captures. We don't see the time varying nature of the obstruction, and he didn't even measure some of those things. So I agree. I'm glad you said that because that is a violation. I would say, to be fair, on both sides, but definitely the ballers have presented things that are very, very convenient and still. And no analysis has been done.
Well, you'll notice that over the months, I don't argue with the Chris Berries or the Osman or any of these. I don't get involved with any of that because to me, there isn't ever given sufficient amount of information for me to really assess what's going on with these photographs. And I much prefer live video associated with a particular photograph.
Sure.
So, George, when you consider NASA fakery or potential fakery, as most flat earthers seem to be able to see the fakery, but all ball earthers seem to be completely blind to it, which sort of way do you sway there? Do you not put trust in any imagery, or is it just a specific thing?
No, that's
imagery that's taken at objects in a distance under varying or suspect atmospheric conditions. Yeah, I mean, a still photograph can hide refraction and shimmering that's going on in the background.
True.
I have taken still photographs and they look perfectly normal, no distortion or whatsoever. But when I go and look at the video that was taken at the same time, I see all kinds of distortion. It just so happened that the photograph was taken at a time when the distortions were a minimum.
We understand that, George, but we're talking about things that you can see that you shouldn't be able to see. Sorry, Chirag, let me just say this. We're talking about things that you can see that you shouldn't be able to see, that we're all acquainted with. And when I asked you about NASA and all the images there, is that just another area you leave to somebody else? And I have one more question then, and that is, finally, thank you, which is, George, can you think of any experiment where solid, liquid, and gas will all behave or act in unison according to an applied force? Because that's what we're asked to believe happens when the Earth is turning, and on a summer's day down by the lake, the Earth appears to be still, the lake water appears to be still, and the atmosphere appears to be still, but we're told that it's all moving in perfect unison according to the same applied force. So that's my couple of questions.
And why is that so hard? I don't quite get that.
So you say that's well, it breaks the laws of physics, natural laws of physics,
No, it
right,
doesn't.
George?
No, it doesn't. No,
We
it
have a
doesn't.
different
Not
consistency.
whatsoever.
We have a different medium, solid, liquid, and gas. The same applied force are going to react differently, necessarily.
Well, they don't act perfectly in concert. There are eddy currents within the atmosphere. You have some winds. You have thermals, air swirling around inside the atmosphere. But the atmosphere mass as a whole, yes, is moving in pretty much in lockstep with the surface of the Earth. I'll be discussing this on Saturday.
So
I'll be
a little
showing you
experiment.
something.
Yeah. A little experiment to demonstrate that solid, liquid, and gas all behave in the same way according to the same applied impetus. That'd be great.
Well,
If
they're
you can
all
prove that. If you can prove that, yeah, but if you can prove that,
they're all
right?
made up of molecules.
And well, the point being, give the perfect illusion of stillness, George, because that's what we're told happens on a summer's day by the lake, where the ground neither seems to be moving, nor the water, nor the air, but we're told they're all moving at a minimum speed of whatever 1,000 miles an hour, let's say, the equator.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'd just like to see an experiment validating that, because of course, back to the Earth's movement, and you never agreed with me or disagreed with me regarding if the Earth can be shown not to move, then the ball would not enter our reckoning if we were trying to figure out the nature of the Earth based on the universal behavior of water, which is
I don't know how you could go about proving that the Earth does not move. It's easier to prove something is rather than isn't. It's always hard to produce to prove a negative.
We have to have a standard for everything, George.
It's much easier to prove that the Earth is moving than that it is
you're
not.
doing so well up until that point, man. No, that's
okay.
Not,
how would you prove
true.
that the Earth is not moving? It's just
all I'm saying is what you just said is a convenient thing, because then it means that
it's not convenient. Tell me how you would prove that the Earth is not moving.
Again, I'm not even actually trying to be confrontational. It's funny that the burden that we have to prove is harder than yours. So you just are.
It is.
It's the same.
It goes both ways.
It's the same.
It goes
motion.
both ways. It's easier to prove something exists rather than trying to prove it does not exist.
That's right, George.
That's a completely different statement. That's a completely different statement.
So hang on, Chirag.
It's not completely different.
Well, George, hang on. That's why I asked you, who can you refer me to who was the first to prove that the Earth moves? And you talked about some shepherds in a field.
Well, I never got you. I was interrupted. I can't give you the name, or I'd have to go back and
it's fine.
Research
we
that.
don't even have to.
Well, I'd love to hear the name, because everyone seems to have assumed that the Earth moves, and you can't find any solid foundational ground for when it was actually proven, and then everything can, based on that, can be solidly known, right? So, in other words, there's a strong foundation. I think you'll be looking.
I think there was probably definitely a good indication at Galileo's time when he turned a telescope onto Jupiter and saw Jupiter had many moons that were nightly changing their position, and from that ascertained that, look at this round object out there in which there's several moons orbiting. Why would we be any different? So I think at that point it was kind of an aha moment.
Well, let me educate you then, George. Let me educate you, because according to your own story, the first man. Now, there might have been people before him who actually decided the Earth itself was moving. The first man to put the Earth, or put the sun at the center and have all of the planets moving around in a circular fashion was none other than someone called Aristarchus of Samos, George. He was the instigator, Chirac, of the heliocentric system, the sun worship system.
Right.
So if we understand that Aristarchus of Samos didn't exist, then how might that apply to, reality and what is turns out to be the nature of this mystery, this game we're playing?
The heliocentric model was basically put on good footing with Copernicus. He was the one that, pretty much put the nail in the coffin on the geocentric model.
Sure, he did. In theory, right, in mathematics, assuming that the Earth moves, but he didn't
Well, it explained
prove that the Earth
things.
moved.
See, well, the thing is with these models, why they're so successful, is they explain so many of the observations. The problem with the geocentric model was they had to have epicycles upon epicycles, orbits, circular orbits upon circular orbits, and then when they found the retrograde of Mars, that just blew everything apart, and it just became so cumbersome. The whole house of cards came crumbling down because of its own weight, and it turned out that a sun-centered system explained everything.
Well, this is where, as flat earthers, we need to follow the clues, right? So, George, if the Earth is not moving and we follow the motion of the skylights over the course of a year, then we have an elliptical orbit, right? This is the general sort of natural, this is what's recorded. We can't throw out all of the different observations, but we can reapply it in the proper context. So that tells me alone that we are dealing with not a circular barrier, it's an elliptical barrier. I showed the map, the Oculus mosaic earlier on, and if you look at it, it is elliptical in nature, eye-shaped in nature. And these are all pertinent questions, as I say, flat earthers should be applying. We'd be foolish to throw out everything that the ball has to offer, because we remember, first of all, that the lie is built on the truth, and second of all, there may be a very different game going on indeed than what you ever dreamed possible. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, George, what I've heard, he hasn't come too much from the historical, like pushing all that history on us. Obviously, he does once in a while, so I wouldn't actually pin you down on the history part, because you're more inclined to test, and I give you credit for that. A lot of other people, I would say the Brendas of the world, are like, it's established, and then just keep whining over and over. It's like, okay, like if that's the case, why is everybody so insecure to get another test? Why don't we get another 5 tests? Why don't we get another 100 tests that pin this down more precisely? So that should be welcomed. And I think just from a qualitative perspective, you guys have to understand, just the vibe alone on the baller side is suspicious. You know, it's like, just, why not? Why don't we do more? Why not? Why don't you guys just let us come to our senses? It'll happen, right? Naturally.
For me, the historical development of science and astronomy in particular is interesting. It's interesting to see how man's thought evolved over the centuries and how the evolution of thought progressed. But I get rather frustrated when I see people bringing out old documents from the 1800s and looking at what Cook recorded in voyages in the southern oceans around Antarctica, and documents with Huygens and Cassini and all these. Huygens, okay. Cassini and all them. And I'm going, well, look at the measurement instruments that they had then were crude. Our measurement instrumentation today is so wonderful compared to what was done even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So give me modern measurements. Give me modern instruments. I don't care what was done. I mean, the stuff that was done 100 years ago, 200 years ago is interesting and stuff, but we have much better ways.
But so why are your boys putting sticks in the ground, dude? You're
well, I don't know. I find it rather curious myself. I mean, I think it's rather foolish and stupid, but I mean, it's kind of fun to recreate some of the old experiments and tests and stuff. I can kind of see that. But if you're going to want to determine the distance to the sun, let's use some radar ranging.
So George, here we'll even give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say our community is small, maybe it's not interesting for you yet, but I would argue that it's fairly big. And let's say you are one of the few people who are on the public arena, not the behind the scenes sergeant and some of these what I think are actors. You could potentially help us. You know, let's say you are the one who comes forward and is the honest one on the baller side and says, you know what, I'm going to architect a test because there's plenty of engineers on Flat Earth, not just Pete and I. There's a lot, I'm certain. And I think people like Riley, he may not be an engineer by training, but he's obviously capable of understanding mathematics and stuff. So yeah, if we had more of people like you come forward and come up with an honest test, and then we do it in a few different locations, maybe one where you're at and stuff, and then we're at that point. Like, it shouldn't be that hard, and obviously we would include some that involve optics and some that don't. And I think that diversity, we're waiting for that, all of us as a community.
Let me ask George a more basic question. You talked about the human mind and the wonders of it. Now, George, are you firmly down
hello. Just before you go too much
Oh,
further,
yeah, okay.
I'm going to be rounding up in 5 minutes, guys. So, yeah, carry on, and yeah, just letting you know that I will be rounding up. I'll leave the call going though, but I will round up in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Ranty.
Okay, well, let me get this question in for George, and because I think ultimately it comes back to the heart of our matters, and as flat earthers, where we find ourselves in this new surround, right? George, when you talked about the human mind, do you hold that this is just a completely random and arbitrary evolution from a primal sort of beginning, no matter how far back you go, and ultimately it's just destined for, I don't know, dissolution and extermination? Is that where you're coming from fundamentally?
Well, what in relation to what? Are we talking about the physical earth or human thought? What are you talking about?
Yeah. What is the nature of man is a bigger question then, because of course hand in hand with Earth's evolution comes the evolution of man from a prior state, right? Ultimately going back to the single-celled organism or something. Is this what you hold to be a truth in terms of your own view of yourself and your endeavors, your mental and physical and lifelong endeavors?
So are you asking me if I accept the theory of evolution?
Well, more so that, how do you evaluate the mind or your being or your place, your core in relation to all of these questions?
You're going down a road that I never go down. If you want to talk about philosophy and things like that, Steve McRae is your man, not me.
No, I was just asking you. You have no views on your own being yourself. I mean,
I did. 30 years ago when I was student, I was questioning those sorts of things. I got involved.
George, we like your opinion, man. Steve McRae is a clown, so that's why Pete's asking you. We don't like those guys.
I don't know. I just don't think about those things. I accept I'm here. I try to do the best that I can while I'm here, and
that's fair.
That's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But you would not be resistant to the flat Earth, correct? If we came up with something,
why would I? I mean, facts are facts. If you can,
that's all.
If you could prove something to me beyond a doubt that my thinking is wrong, I mean, actually, to tell you the truth, there's been in the evolution of the last couple of years, and some of the things, some of the concepts of physics that I took for granted from the flat Earth questions or questions from flat earthers made me look into things a little more, and I go,
great,
I had this wrong, and. So I rethought it over and came up with the what I believe to be the correct explanation. But sometimes on some of these things, you can't know everything. You don't go through every little aspect of physics. You have to sort of focus on certain areas of concentration. You can't know everything in physics. And there were some things that I had wrong that I've since modified my thought about and refined my thought. I revisit these things constantly, and I'm constantly refining my thought.
That's good, and that's why I think Pete and I harp on that, because we've been around. He's probably talked to more people, way more people than I, who are suspect what their intentions are, and that getting that clear is not always obvious. So we're not even necessarily charging you with violating that. But this is the last statement I want to make. All these different laws, dude, like you know the Biot-Savart law, L'Hopital's rule, all these things that are out there, and like, do you genuinely believe that was like random? Like, I think someone like you, if you're this deep in mathematics, which I suspect that you are, looking at your background, do you honestly genuinely think that can be a result of a statistical event? Does that ever rub you the wrong way? Does that draw you to these discussions in any way? That's not logical, right? The math is so elegant.
They had in the past, but the more I dig into science and understand the nature of science and how things can fit together and evolve, I've drifted more and more away from the necessity of having a central design, so to speak.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks,
because
for your
one
time,
of the things that when getting to philosophy of these sorts of things, one of the thoughts that I've had, and of course I have no way of verifying it one way or the other, is that we know now that our universe is about 13.75 billion years old. But if you look at all the fundamental constants and how they fit together, some people look at it and say, this had to be intelligent design.
Yeah, guys, that'll do me. That will do me. Bit knackered now. I'll get 3.5 hours sleep though, so it's not too bad. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. It was a good 3.5 hour stream. We had a few different people in, which was great. It's nice to see so many people stop by as well. At one point we had well over 200, so absolutely awesome. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Just want to tell you a little couple of things that are happening this week. I'm trying to get organised a ladies' night, so instead of having all the old guys on like we normally have, we're going to have some ladies on, so that should be interesting. You know, listen to a different side of the argument just from the ladies' perspective. I'm still going to try and get another presentation in this week. I know that George is going to do one on Saturday, so I don't normally do ones on Saturday, but Saturday it will be. Also, we've got Toady and Sleeping Warrior. They're going to be doing their debate on Wednesday. I know that Brian, you wanted to come in at some point this week, so maybe Tuesday, maybe Thursday, just depending on when I can get this ladies' night organised. It'd be nice to see Paige come in. I think I'm going to be getting Roxanne and Dolly. I know them two are definitely up for coming in. So it'll be interesting, maybe get 4 or 5, who knows. Just interesting to listen to a different side for a change, some different voices. Super chats, I'm going to shout out all the people that super chatted today. So we had Nathan Oakley, Logan's Run, The Plain Truth, Sam Hain, Way BMX, Super Looming Hyena, John Watson, Red Rocket, JQ, B-Ball for Life, Earth is Seriously Flat, and Gerhard Selig. Thank you every one of you for smashing that super chat today. Thank you very much. It'll go towards the amount of beers that I drank this weekend on Saturday night. If you saw the live stream, I was pretty cut then, so that's just the way it is, I suppose. Right, so I am actually still recording these guys. I think. Maybe I'm not, but either way. I'm going to leave it here. Thanks everyone for stopping by. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night, same time, 11 PM. If you get the opportunity, guys, I'm going to just put Nathan Oakley's link in the chat right now. So I'm going to put his link in the chat. He's just teetering on that 15,000 subscriber mark, and I know that I've had a few new subscribers myself. So if you're one of those new subscribers and you haven't had a chance to check his channel out, if you would just pop on over and just subscribe to him over there, maybe watch a couple of his streams, you'll see what it's all about, and let's see if we can keep him above the 15,000 mark. It would be nice. He's been hovering around that for a full year, so giving him a massive shout out, because you know, I am actually a friend of his, and it's nice to see him so close to the 15,000. We want to get him to about 1530 though, so here's the link now. Right, so that will do for me, and yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow night. I hope you all turn up, 11 PM BST, that's London time, and we'll get something organised. Maybe it will be the ladies' night tomorrow night, who knows. But in the meantime, I'll see you all in the next one.